Is AI the Antichrist? Something to ponder, isn't it? Is AI the Antichrist? Now, why would I say that? What would be so bold, so daring to even utter such an analogy, such a different perspective? And I don't believe I'm the only one who's thought this. I just wonder at times when we look how the world is going and how reliant we become on variety of technologies, that we are in fact slaves to technology, and being a freedom seeker as you must be as well, that freedom from all constraints, whether it's emotional, spiritual, financial, and beyond. It is like we are tethered to technology, our second brain here. So, what I find so interesting is how we get involved in this conversation, how we become so dependent. And being a Gen Xer, I remember a time when there were no cell phones, when the video games, I think one of the first video games I was exposed to was built into our TV, and it was Pong. If you remember Pong, and so we had this giant remote that plugged into the TV, and then it would just like doink, 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 right? And that was it, black and white, and the things moved back and forth, up and down. But then I remember when call waiting came in, and that was a new technology, and we had the ability, no longer a busy signal, we could then chime in or out, we'd take that other call and so forth. And these technologies made our lives supposedly more simple, to make it and give us some more free time, freedom of time, freedom seeker. But then cell phones came out. If you remember, you may be old enough to remember this. When cell phones first came out, they were free. Now, why were they free? Well, the same reason why, if you remember the old story around dealers, drug dealers, they give you the first hit for free, knowing that once you had a taste, that would become the new normal. We say, okay, I want this all the time. So they gave away the free phones, and then we found ourselves not being able to live without them until we be willing to pay whatever it cost in order to continue to have the convenience of said device. Now, what has happened over time, if you recall a time when, if you were doing a book report, what did we do? We had to get the book. We had to read the book, and then we would create our own summary, or we found someone who already did the summary, but it was still in another book, the Cliff Notes or the Idiot's Guide to. And then as time grew on, as technology became to be more accessible, what happened is we no longer needed to have the Encyclopedia Britannica in our living room. We had it on, actually, if you recall correctly, it was on a DVD-ROM or CD-ROM. And then now it's accessible through, all information is accessible through the internet. Now, what happened is, if you remember, Jim Morrison once said, those who control information control the world. Without getting political, we can all agree that during those crazy times, during COVID and all of that, what happened with information? A new term was adopted in many ways, and it wasn't necessarily new, but it was overused perhaps. Misinformation, disinformation, censorship, etc. So what happened was, you could point the finger at potentially people who were giving misinformation or disinformation or erroneous, whatever it was, and there was censorship occurring as well. Now, whether you agree with this or not, the freedom of having the conversation is what is important, right? And as a freedom seeker, if you're part of the freedom seeking society, you acknowledge how important it is for you and I to have that sovereignty, that autonomy, that ability to make decisions, to get the information by any means we are comfortable getting it, and then discern whether or not it is accurate or not, or means what it means to us. That is the freedom of choice. See, if we're not provided a choice, there's no choice. If we're only given two choices, That is a dilemma. That's not good either. But when we have three or more choices, now we have options. Now we're able to make decisions. We're actually able to educate ourselves and question things and go, does this make sense? And be able to use our critical thinking muscle. So during that crazy time, what happened was there were situations in which information was not necessarily passed on. People were not able to see certain bits of information because other people decided that that wouldn't be necessarily helpful or would fall into their agenda and beyond. Now, again, without getting into the politics of this, the fact remains that that occurred. So much so that if you recall, Zuckerberg recently came out stating, in fact, that he was pressured to not post certain information, to reduce the availability of, to essentially censor information. Now, whether or not you agree with the energy behind it, the truth is that once we open that Pandora's box, we are running some serious, serious challenges because now we won't know who to trust. Now, check this out. Since that, we know that when Google filters certain things and you can pay for ads, and the more and more it's starting to make it look like it's not necessarily a banner ad, and they're finding ways to get information because everything's marketing anyway, even politics, even in truth telling, even in lie telling, it's all around marketing that message. So what has happened, and the reason why I pose this idea of is AI the Antichrist, because what's going to happen is, and it's happening already. So to put a timestamp on this, this is January 27th of 2025. And recently, a new level of AI was just released called DeepSeek. Now, DeepSeek is apparently an even more powerful, more efficient open source AI technology that is created in another country, the communist China. And it actually is not at the point where it is able to filter real time, but it has been honest enough when asked who programmed you, where what do you do? Does your filtering and does your share of information have any constraints? And it said that it was controlled by, written by the Communist Party of China, the Chinese Communist Party, right? CCP. And that they're working, it's not yet there. It admitted that it's not yet able to do the filtering real time, but everything within its framework will be in line with what the programmers believe in. So it's only going to be information passed through that meets its criteria, which is censorship.